or every year in the month of May, we proclaim May as Beef Month. And we do that to highlight our state's #1 industry. Agriculture, as you know, is our state's overall biggest industry and accounts for about 20% of our overall state's economy. And about 1 in 4 jobs in Nebraska is tied back to agriculture. And beef is the largest part of that. In fact, beef is about half of all of our agricultural ag receipts here in the state of Nebraska, a little bit over. So the beef industry is clearly our #1 industry here in the state of Nebraska. And we always sign this beef proclamation to be able to help promote our state's #1 industry. We are the #1 state for commercial red meat slaughter. We're the #2 state for cattle on feed. We're the #2 state for cattle and calves. And even though our exports were off slightly in 2020, down about 4%, we were the #2 beef exporting state in the country. And in fact, if you look at some places like the European Union, Nebraska is the #1 beef supplier to the European Union, with 62.6% of all the beef that is coming from the United States going to the European Union coming from Nebraska. Isn't that great? That's worth a round of applause, right? Good stuff. So we want to continue to highlight the great work that beef does, creating all sorts of jobs here. Now, it's also especially important that we highlight what beef does for our state with all the attacks that have been coming from the radical environmentalists to Bill Gates on the beef industry. You know, Bill Gates suggested that we start growing beef in a petri dish and eating it that way. You certainly see the radical environmentalists trying to get people to eat less beef. We had Colorado declare like it was a meatless Tuesday or something like that, which is why we declared March 20th meat on the menu day, to be able to help promote the nutritional value of beef. Think about it. You can get more protein from 3 ounces of beef than you can get in 3 cups of quinoa. Who wants to eat 3 cups of quinoa anyway? There's not really anything you're going to find that is more nutritionally dense than beef to be able to consume. It's part of a nutritional, healthy diet. That's part of the message that we have to get out to people, is let people know how important beef is to an overall healthy diet. It's very important. And then also, when people start talking about, oh, we should cut back on beef or get rid of the beef industry, what they don't understand is that our farmers and ranchers were the original conservationists. They wanted to pass on the land and their animals to the next generation, so they took care of both. In fact, U.S. News and World Report ranked Nebraska the 6th best state overall for the environment, while the president's home state of Delaware is the 6th worst state as far as an overall environment. Our beef producers since the 1960s have increased beef production by 66% while helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. And in fact, if you look at our beef producers here in the United States, we produce beef and create half the greenhouse gases as the rest of the world creates when they're producing beef. And in some countries, we're 10 to 50 times better than those countries with regard to controlling greenhouse gas emissions than they are with regard to producing beef. And then it also just overlooks some of the other things that go along with beef production. Over 70% of the land in the United States is not suitable, not arable for agriculture. But it can be grazed by animals, which creates a food source for us. So if we are to get rid of our beef, we're going to be undermining our food security. Not only are we going to be undermining our nutrition, we're going to be undermining our food security. In fact, 86% of the feed that is fed to beef is not edible by humans. So if you're going to take away that food source, we're not going to be able to feed a growing world. So it's very important people understand that livestock and beef, livestock in general and beef in particular, create food security by allowing us to be able to create a food source that we would not be able to get otherwise. So it's a very important point to make there. And then of course, finally, if you do away with the beef industry, you're going to be devastating Nebraska. We just talked about how beef is our #1 industry here. It would be a huge impact on our small towns and rural communities to have that impact on our state's #1 industry. That also raises concerns with the president when he starts talking about his 30 by 30 plan and how he wants to set aside 30% of the nation's waters and land into conservation by the year 2030. Well, here in Nebraska, 97% of our land is privately owned. What's he going to do? Is he going to confiscate land here in Nebraska for his plan? That would also have a devastating impact on our small towns and rural communities. And again, if you look at what we've done here in Nebraska with regard to conservation, we have been able to have that sixth best environment that I talked you about already, but also we're the state with the most irrigated acres of any state in the country. And while we're irrigating all those acres to be able to grow food to feed a growing world, we have also kept our aquifer here in Nebraska within 1 foot of where it was in the 1950s through smart water conservation and regulation. And that was all without the federal government telling us what to do. We don't need the federal government to tell us how to take care of our land here in Nebraska. We know how important it is, and nobody's going to care more about the land here in Nebraska than Nebraskans. And that's what we've demonstrated over all these years. So this is a great opportunity to talk about what a great job our farmers and ranchers do to be able to conserve our land, how they reduce greenhouse gases, how they create a food source for the entire world right here from Nebraska. So I'm very pleased to be able to sign this beef proclamation. And then before I do that, real quick, the next person I'm going to hand it off to is going to be Steve Wellman. And he's going to talk about our new program to promote beef. And that's our Beef Passport Program. This is a great program where we're going to be highlighting the restaurants around the state that are serving beef, giving people a chance to order that beef in restaurants, get a little stamp on their passport, and then be able to win prizes, which Steve will talk about a little bit more. So before we get into that, I'm going to go ahead and sign our proclamation. We are officially proclaimed as May as Beef Month here in the state of Nebraska.